Okay, watch this. Bang. And one more hit.
And then it will...
it's like a clay pigeon, and it explodes.
Right.
We know nothing else about this video, and what a start.
White sands, probably a military
I'm
shell or
imagining it
something.
must have been.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Here's what I was saying earlier, how these clusters, they'll begin to multiply as, for some reason, as we progress from the 90s.
Yeah, it reminds me of the fact that each year the crop circle phenomena, the legitimate ones, get more sophisticated, and here we're seeing higher proliferations of numbers in the same general area of Mexico as the phenomena becomes more recognized and recorded.
Yeah, maybe they're spawning or something.
Yeah, right. Hey, how do they get new UFOs? We do not know, folks. Sao Paulo?
Yeah, this seems to be a television cameraman.
Right.
Again, similar to the Mexico ones.
Mm-hmm. So, got a close-up here.
I'm sure the original copy must be much better.
Sure.
This seems to be through several generations.
Very grainy, yeah. I think you ought to take this one.
Yeah, this is from the International Exhibition of Aeronautics that they do in Chile every year, and this is part of a show, sort of similar to Thunderbirds here in this country.
Sure, a conventional air show that you'd see.
It's called the Falcons in Chile.
I see.
Halcones from the Chilean Air Force. And oddly enough, during the past several years, there's been odd things filmed during this exhibit. I think this one goes very fast.
Yeah, there it was.
But you will see some further, later on you will see some more of these, and they're quite unusual.
Negative.
Yeah.
And there we see it again, coming up laterally through the screen, disappearing stays right there. Yep.
In order to see the object better.
Yeah. Okay, and off we go to Israel here. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about this. Again, these cases from Israel, I'm not that familiar. This seems to be something that landed almost.
It does indeed. And
very close to the ground.
Again, if you're listening or you go back to the initial track, you will hear some rather excited voices.
In Hebrew. Yeah, there has been a lot of UFO activity in Israel. And again, Israel was not, like Mexico, was not famous in the 60s or 70s. Or even in the 80s. I think it was around 1987 with the famous landing on a beach in Haifa. And on a beach near Haifa, something that where the activity started in Israel. And it's picked up on the last decade.
That's right. And you'll notice at the end of the credits at each one of these tapes the name Barry Shamish.
Well, he's an ufologist from Israel.
And we, right now, if you want to get an idea of what is going on in Israel relative to UFOs and UFO research, there's a very good website called UFO Research in Israel, and you can find that on the links page of ufocity.com, and that's Barry's site.
He's the main ufologist from Israel, and of course Mike goes very often to Israel too, and that's why he's collected, I guess, all these tapes.
Yeah, seems like a very nice guy. We've been in some correspondence, and he writes not just on contemporary UFOs, and he has a terrific...
some biblical and stuff like that, too, historical, right? Yeah, I never met him, but I've seen he wrote for Fate magazine, too, and for various publications.
And right now, Israel is experiencing, well, right now being when we're talking, which is summer of 1999, a tremendous resurgence of triangles again flying over their territory. Well, we're not over Israel now, but we sure have another one of those enigmatic white dots moving along.
Yep.
Let's pan in there if we can, Mr. Photographer.
And again,
rather pastoral scene.
I don't know what comes in black and white, the video here, but...
yeah, it's kind of unusual, actually. Whoa.
Maybe the transference of different codes sometimes, or...
Exactly. We don't know.
We don't know.
A lot of this original...
Now we move to Jerusalem. Very, very brief.
Back to Quito.
Again, this is misleading. Initially, you think, oh, maybe an airplane, but now the lights start multiplying, and airplanes don't do that.
Yeah, you don't have any blinkers on it either. Pentagon.
Yeah.
And yet it is not an absolutely regular shape, but it's about the closest. It's very close to a regular pentagon. You don't think that is the Pentagon, do you?
Is it building of the Pentagon? No, I don't think so.
It's pretty impressive, though, and there's no question in my mind that those lights are integrated. They are part of the same structure.
Yeah, definitely. Look like
it does seem to be rotating, doesn't it? Yeah. And now it is doing a little shape-shifting. Let's get back in frame here. It has seemingly respaced itself.
It would seem wrong. Huh. That's pretty strange. Slovakia, I think this is the first one we've seen from Slovakia.
I think you're right. Airport.
Oh yeah, this is I think also part of.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Now that.
It goes so fast that you have to put it in slow motion. There's one from Gulf Breeze, which is not in this collection, which is almost identical. You've probably seen it.
And one of my thoughts was, if that is, let's say, some kind of missile that is being fired by the military, it seems to have no stabilizing devices at all, which would, be counterproductive. That is a knockout of whatever it is. It's definitely a unidentified
flying object.
Yeah, and the long, skinny, cigar-shaped kind. Okay.
It's very similar to some of the ones we saw in Mexico and elsewhere, the night ones.
There's another case where these two lights may be part of the same integrated object. So far, their movement, as we saw in that close-up, they seem to be moving at the exact same rate and trajectory. We'll see if that's the same in this next close-up.
Now it seems to be almost one object.
Here we go.
They seem to merge and then separate, which is extremely interesting.
Good trick.
The polymorphism. Now they're definitely separated. Oh, there's... yeah.
And it's got a friend.
Oh, 2 and 2 now.
Again, these do not mimic... now we have flashing on that one.
It would almost seem that the upper one is an airplane.
That would be my guess if it continues, if it were to have continued to flash in a regular manner, but the other one was decidedly not.
This almost seems identical. Almost seems like the same incident, taped by a different guy on the same night.
It's always possible. We're not close enough, whether that is two close lights or seemingly one. Let's see if we get a zoom in on this. Have a bit of figure ground, even though it's an extreme night shot. It's always a plus to have some kind of referential point.
Now, Israel being such a small country and with such a tight air defense, I would imagine that anything that flies over Israel is immediately
scrambled and observed and gone after. Wow, nice join. Outstanding. That's
really
pretty
unusual.
impressive.
Now, this is very interesting. Unfortunately, it's very short.
Yeah.
You see the flag. That's the presidential palace in Ecuador, in Quito, the capital. And look, that object goes...
Almost looks like a teardrop shape.
And it just zooms by.
Wow.
You see the Ecuadorian flag there? That's a repeat now. And there it goes. Very, very interesting. Short, but very interesting.
Yeah.
the famous NATO base in Aviano. Here you will see a stealth.
One of ours.
This is a 117 stealth.
Yeah, it sure is.
Now, if you would have seen this object in 1983, that would have been a UFO.
Classic, yes, definitely.
Because officially it didn't exist, and yet it obviously did exist.
And now it's an IFO. Okay.
Now, this had me going, again, this is a totally anonymous.
Right.
Which makes me always suspicious.
Yeah.
So, because anonymous, you don't know any of the circumstances.
It's true. It is true. An orphan piece, so to say. Again, we certainly respect the fact that for many people there is a real ridicule factor to take into consideration. At the same time, it is certainly of value to have that information.
Well, like I said earlier, so long as the investigator knows. Yeah. I understand that the person, I myself,
sure. Well, like in a criminal investigation,
recently, and people don't want their names on TV. Yeah. That I fully understand. But
and there's a case where we don't even know whether.
So there's anonymous and anonymous. Let's say there's anonymous to the public, but identity is known by the investigator, and then it's truly anonymous, and that's the one that it tends to be more suspicious. Because if the person doesn't want anything to do, then why even send it? And that indeed is the case.
Question.
There's probably tons of UFO photos sitting in drawers of people. And,
sure. And probably a number of very legitimate ones that.
Now this,
back over Israel,
Peter, this has to be the most bizarre, I think, of his entire collection.
It is not exactly aerodynamic looking, is it?
Last night.
Same thing. Last night, going over these videos in preparation for today, this one has one of the highest levels of what the heck is that attached to it.
It doesn't look like any kind of aerodynamic object. Unfortunately, it's at night, so there's no reference points.
It is the weirdest darn thing.
And in the tape, in the audio track, you do hear people in Hebrew, and apparently they call their neighbors or whatever, because towards the end of the tape, you see a lot of people.
Yes.
You don't see anybody, but you hear the voices.
Noticeably, exactly.
Here looks like a regular UFO, but then when regular in quotation mark, and then when he zooms, this is so odd.
There is nothing else like this I have ever seen.
Nor in descriptions either. I'd never come across anything like this.
If it's out there, between us, we've certainly heard about it.
Yeah, it's kind of a truck, but with even parts missing, or part of an apartment floating. I don't know.
It is. It redefines the term anomaly.
Yes.
And it also seems to have apparatus or attachments.
Yeah, it looks artificial. It doesn't look at all some even weird natural phenomena. It looks like artificial of some kind.
Without question, nothing grows that shape, and it's not a bird or anything. That is a sun.
What is it, and what's its purpose? And it doesn't seem to even be moving.
Just hanging.
Now there's no change, so it's just the same tape, I guess.
It seems to be the same tape. But
color of the sky changes.
Yeah, it could have been some hours later. It doesn't look like the same phenomena by any stretch here. We've got another variation on the white dot.
This is a little bit more, but here again, when they focus somehow.
Yeah, and we've got several new entries. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. I think there's a certain amount of handshake going on
I think some of it is handshake. Although you could see kind of a little trail.
Yeah, some of it seems to be genuine movement as well. And there's
now we're back to that weird thing.
Right. The Chevrolet or the station wagon, the semi.
The semi-Chevrolet. It's just odd.
And
even
we're
for a UFO, it is
our eyes
odd.
As much as you are to figure out what the heck we're seeing here, and we don't know.
This would be one interesting case to
really
to talk to the witnesses and all that.
It almost looks like it has black stripes on it.
It's different now, but it's still just as odd.
Whoa. That has got to be the strangest shape
It is absolutely
on
strange.
this whole collection.
I think so. I think of the entire collection, this is the oddest one.
Those black stripes seem evenly spaced. Well, this one has at least a little sense of style, some racing stripes. Very nice. That is wild. One is also struck by the fact that it seems so decidedly unaerodynamic.
Yeah, even the position of the thing, it's not horizontal, it's not vertical, it's like in between.
Pinata from space.
Piñata from space, yeah. This one from...
Are these the same?
Anonymous guys from Sweden again.
Right. We don't know if it's the same two anonymous guys. Worth considering. Again, a somewhat ambiguous, but very well-defined shape up there. And one does wish that we knew a little bit more about this. Because sometimes the best thing you can say is, I just don't know what to say about that one.
Yeah, that's the problem of the anonymous, real anonymous, as opposed to the anonymous to the public.
Yeah.
In this second case, the
in
investigator has talked to the witness, knows who took the thing, and so on. You know, so even though when he published, that's happened to me too. When you publish the article, you'll say, you know, I talked to the person, blah blah blah. He wants to remain anonymous.
Well, it's a standard and very valuable,
especially for abductions,
technique.
right? This is very common.
Without question, you don't want to compromise a person's privacy in an area
correct.
like that.
But you know who the person is. Whereas when it's totally anonymous and the thing arrives in the mail, let's say, there's nothing you can do.
Pure faith and trust. Okay, we have one here shot by a person who is a professor
in
Ecuador again.
Yeah. White balls again.
Back and forth movement again. Now that is nothing that we have anything that can do, except for maybe that thing we saw sometime back in the Nellis test area.
Right. And again, this is balloons that wouldn't do that.
No way. No way.
It's moving fairly horizontal too.
Yeah.
But like back and forth.
It stops, goes back on the other trajectory. Fascinating. That is, for me, I know, one of the real deciding factors in sorting out genuine, I know that is an unknown, or, well, you know, it could be a this, could be a that.
This seems to be from an air show or something?
Yeah, but I guess that is the anomalous object there coming to the contrail.
Again, the quality is very poor on this one.
But even, you know, sometimes on a clip like this, if you squint ever so slightly, you get about as good a look. It sort of tightens the pixels in a way. And that seems to me to be kind of egg-shaped with a sense of shadow, so that one is intriguing. Back to Israel here.
Yeah, we have many from Israel on this tape. This is pretty bizarre, too.
Huh. Extremely in your face.
Very in your face. No. Well, now we have some reference points.
Yeah, this is good. Get a sense of...
Oh, there it is.
And yet again, here we are dealing with a variation, a shape variation we have not seen before.
Right.
And just have to underscore how that is part of the pattern of UFOs.
Open now.
When you think you have seen all the configurations, there is another one.
And change again.
Look at that. We don't know whether that glow is some kind of refraction from the video footage.
Oh, the glow, probably, but again, we don't know.
Yep. It certainly seems like a substantial shaped light. Okay, not the Philip Roth who is the American author.
Oh yeah, this was had me also going yesterday. They seem to be in
Some
interference,
relationship.
which you get on the audio track. Each time it goes by the antenna or whatever it is, you hear like a strange crack or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice detail, actually. Because for most videos, we really have no sense of anything approaching sound, and overwhelmingly in the history of UFO studies, with a handful of outstanding exceptions, these things are always silent.
Well, sometimes when the witness is close, you did hear these hissing noises, or like
and
described as
remember the
bees.
Obarski case, like the hum of a refrigerator?
Right, hums, but only at close distances.
Yeah, in the overwhelming number of cases, there is no
At a
associated
distance, no.
sound.
No, there's
And
no like
certainly in
aircraft
flight.
type sounds, no. That's one of the puzzling things of the physics of UFOs.
And I know it's one of the things that makes a lot of people who are married to conventional physics very frustrated. How can these things be powered and moving along without a byproduct of some kind of sound?
Right.
But again, we may be way beyond our imaginings on propulsive sources here, so it's completely open to speculation.
But at close distance, yes, you do. There's a humming or a hissing noise that's commonly associated, and which seems to paralyze too. That seems to be also something to do sometimes with the paralysis of witnesses, numbing effect and things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're using some kind of ultrasonics. Or
Again, completely open to whatever one wants to think about it, which is one of the good things and one of the frustrating things about this field of research, which is very rewarding in terms of really challenging your intellectual curiosity. Not a great career decision if you're into making a fair amount of money, but a very interesting avocation, no question about it. And here we go back to Mexico.
Yeah, to the white little
and
objects, but I think this is going to break. Looks like
it looked like at the very beginning it was 3 close lights.
Yeah.
Let's see if indeed we redivide here. There's some distinctions in the line there. It does seem like 3 shapes. Nope.
That was it. And more Mexico still. No, this seems to be your almost traditional light in the sky. Yeah?
You remember when we were kids on the old analog?
Yes, look, separated there.
I was going to say the old analog TVs where you turned off and the last thing you see is the white dot in the middle. This isn't that.
Right. And again, it's like spawning there.
Look at that. Yeah, it's almost like a chain of little lights.
Which we saw in some of the Mexico and also in one from Korea.
And they're so subtle. At points you see what seems to be 3, 4, the suggestion of a 5th.
So it seems to be almost an organic...
If it's not, it mimics that sensibility, no question about it. Okay.
Santos, that's a large city in Brazil. This is from an air show, too.
Oh, dear.
Oh, yes, this is not a happy ending here.
This is a sad one. And oh, Lord.
And
what a terrible sight.
I guess later you do see like a little object almost streaking by the plane.
It might be a bit of the plane's own debris.
Well, that
it
part,
might not.
But here, I think
we're going to see.
There it is. But maybe it is the plane already breaking up.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Or some little probe checking it out as it's going down. Sad sight.
Or even a collision.
Yeah.
There was in Mexico, there was a time an airplane collided, but it was a very small object, so the passengers and everything felt it. And then the aviation investigators did find a little, so it did collide with something, but it was so small that fortunately there was no accident.
Well, we're back in Bonnybridge now.
Back to the famous town of Scotland of Bonnybridge, yes.
And now this is one of the...
this is one of the most remarkable NASA ones.
It surely is.
Not as well known as...
now, remember a few hours ago when
these are storms.
That is what a good lightning storm looks like from space. So let us not confuse that.
Yeah, you will see many things. Those lights, though, don't seem to be the storms.
What the heck?
See the difference between the two phenomena. The storms are just like a kind of exploding.
Yeah.
But that big light there, and there's
two
a small one
ones.
also. Yeah.
Now, granted, we may be dealing with a conventional satellite phenomena, but if they are legitimate Earth satellites, they should be moving in dead straight trajectories, clicking along. And let us see what, and we have another one there on the lower left coming in. Let's just watch their behavior.
This will go for a while, and there's many strange things on this video.
And this was shot by Columbia, right? From aboard?
I believe so, yes, STS-80.
You know, that thing that just streaked by gives us something to compare it to. That's a legitimate little meteorite.
A meteorite, that's what it looks like.
But these things
which are many that people don't see because they burn in the atmosphere. Or micrometeorites, they call them in some
These
cases.
shapes, now look at that. We're milling around, literally. They're stopping. They're changing direction subtly.
It's a huge electrical storm.
Again, that could be several hundred miles below them. And again, it's terrific to have those legitimate meteorites.
And look at now outside of the Earth orbit, outside of the Earth
We've
line
got
there.
several of those little guys.
There's three. There's another one here.
They seem to not be moving on straight trajectories. Again, the term milling comes to mind. We have a larger one coming up from frame lower right. A lot of unexplained activity up there, folks.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting tape.
You know, you might want to pick one and just fix on it for a bit. And again, if that is a legitimate Earth satellite, it's just going to click along on its same trajectory. It's not going to stand still. And granted, if they were coming right at us, the illusion would be that it was essentially standing still, but slowly getting larger. And even that doesn't fit into what we seem to be seeing here.
Yeah, they're even like moving away from the Earth now. One of them is.
Yes.
Others are moving into it.
Right. They're almost disappearing into.
It's very strange. And this, as opposed to the Discovery tape, which got a lot of attention, this has not gotten much attention.
No, and thank you, Michael, for getting this clip for us, because it really is remarkable.
I think I saw clips of the storms. That was on the news, but cleverly, you know, they left the other stuff out. They just had like a very brief, or might have even been from another mission, but I remember seeing the electrical storms.
Well, it is very dramatic footage. And again, we're seeing those blasts of lightning through cloud cover to a degree. Very dramatic.
Very dramatic, yeah.
Okay, back on Earth.
And back to Mexico City. Where else?
I'll bet we probably have more clips from Mexico on these because of the profusion.
Well, yeah, it's also a thing that sometimes when you have a lot of diffusion, a lot of publicity about it, then people will get motivated, will send the tapes. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, in many countries, we don't have a single tape, at least in this collection, but I'm sure Mike is very diligent, so it means that it's very difficult to get tapes.
Yes.
I think we only finally make it one in China at the very end, and considering it's the largest population in the Earth, it's got to be more videos, but they're not easy to come by, obviously.
And we are now into 1997, so-called the 50th anniversary year of the modern UFO phenomenon.
Modern era, as explained in the credits in the beginning of each segment. That's with the Kenneth Arnold, that's where the term flying saucer comes. And which is sociologically important because whereas before, I'm sure we know from historical record, there were UFO reports, but they didn't have a name, so they kind of get lost in the literature.
And again, for those of you that will be delving into the document archive here, for me, 1947 has to be at least one of, if not the most fascinating year of American quiet historical changes.
Yeah, and however, no footage from 1947.
No.
Photos, there are some.
Yes.
But there are about a few photos, but there are some during the flap of 47.
But for those of you that have thought that, well, the military and the intelligence community does not take this seriously, you're in for quite an awakening as you go through this documentation.
Now we go to Chile.
Now, where in Chile is this shot? 'Cause it's
This
your picture.
Quilpue, it's in the central region, but towards the beach, towards the sea coast.
Right.
And this was in 97. There were many, there was a flap with many sightings and quite a few footages, which were collected by a very active ufologist from Chile, called Rodrigo Fuenzalida, has a group called ION. That's the acronym for Group of Investigation of UFO, but in Spanish. And so he's been collecting many of these cases. He's a very serious fellow. He's a sociologist. He works in conjunction with the University of Santiago. We had some symposiums there, as you know, where...
Is that where you and David Jacobs
Yeah,
spoke?
David Jacobs. We went there in 97, same year of these footages. And also in earlier this year, 99, we went with Dr. Bruce Maccabee. And this is Reñaca. This is a beach resort.
Let's tighten up that image.
And well, this is the close-up. In the audio track, you can see I think this is it looks like a young couple, a man and a woman, and they're, discussing what they're seeing, and I see a UFO, and so on. If you know Spanish, you get to understand, although there's not much description. If you don't know Spanish, you can still get the emotion of what we were talking about, the Hebrew and so on.
Yeah. Okay, Yorkshire, Central England. And we have our classic triangle, it looks like, although that third light seems a bit dimmed.
And of course, there's been tons of triangular sightings in England in the last few years.
And there's a fourth light making this a rectangle.
But yes, this is not your standard triangle.
No, just when you thought you had nailed it down, it's changing.
They call them the flying triangles. They even have an acronym, FTs, and they have catalogs, and probably some military, would be my guess. Not this one, but I mean they're flying triangles. Now, this is a very interesting case. St. Petersburg, of course. The second largest city in Russia. And this was a very good case. Multiple witnesses and multiple videos.
Excellent.
And it was seen by... Who knows? Well, it was late at night, but it was still seen by probably hundreds, if not thousands of witnesses, including people at the control tower.
Yes, that I remember.
And then there was a Navy captain who did compile a report called Pavel Sirchenko. He wrote the report about this case. And there were at least 2 videotapes, maybe more. I'm aware of at least 2. And they're quite good, as you can see, the quality here.
Yeah, and at least we did have a bit of figure ground as they pulled back, and once again, here we are, seeing it as a little dot in the sky against the city. Beautiful old city, too. I was there many years ago when it still was Leningrad. And as we close in, once again, quite a collection of lights.
Yeah, very, very good case. Again, on that documentary on Channel 4 in England, they did interview the guy from the control tower. They did interview Captain Sirchenko. And they did interview at least one of the guys who took the videotapes. So it's kind of a very well-documented case. He's got all the earmarks of a good case, multiple videos, multiple witnesses.
And credible witnesses. Military backgrounds, air traffic controllers, needless to say, are very valuable as witnesses, especially backing up.
They're the best because they have
and these
obviously
guys
so much experience in watching aircraft.
And also they, in many cases, are jeopardizing their professional career by having the courage to come forward. This is not the kind of job where you want to sound like you see UFOs every day.
And now this looks very similar to the one in Greifswald. Remember the one in Germany that it was in one of the early tapes?
Yeah, this one is a little more symmetrical, seemingly
and
at times.
less amount of lights.
Yeah, we seem to have a basic 4 lights, a central piece, and 3 evenly radiating out. And it's not anymore.
Yeah.
That's all changed.
And as you can also, this went on for quite a while, as you can tell also.
Well, now they all seem to have lined up pretty much.
Right. Look, more now. The spawning effect of UFOs. I think this is one of the things that
How little
comes
UFOs
across
are
on
made.
this tape. Yeah. Now we know.
I always thought there was a factory like Detroit somewhere out there on another planet.
No, it seems to be more organic.
Well, the experts disagree. Santiago.
But then again, even speculation about modern technologies, like it will get more organic.
Yeah.
So maybe very advanced technology. Now, these are the part of these, I think this is part of the air show, or no, maybe not. But later we will see the other take of the air show in a place called Pucón Lake in the south of Chile.
Mm-hmm.
And where it creates like a ring in the sky.
Yes, it looks like a giant donut or lightsaber.
Sort of a sky crop circle.
It is unlike anything I've ever seen in any of these
and it really
videos.
doesn't look like an object. That is like a phenomenon.
Yeah,
you know, but
it's
what?
round and
Yeah.
it looks like a giant donut.
Yeah, and when we get to it, we'll discuss because
yeah.
I do know some details about it. I think now we're into the famous Phoenix lights, right?
I think so, right? That came in over Phoenix, Arizona.
Now we're in the
seen by-
early part of the incident, which lasted actually for quite a while, and they had
let's
several
remember-
phases.
Exactly, that people saw them
People
coming.
mostly saw what people remember in the media is the final,
Right,
you know,
the kind of giant
which we will
V
also
over
see.
Phoenix.
Right, but it had many other faces.
It did, and as it came closer to Phoenix, people reported it on the route. And when that
Right.
route was traced, it was a straight trajectory. But this is a perfect example of how a major UFO incident hits the newspaper for a moment and then disappears. Thousands and thousands of people witnessed this. It was not a group of airplanes.
No. Even the military, finally under pressure.
Yes.
Initially, they kind of disregarded the
Sure.
thing, but finally under pressure because even some Arizona politicians got involved, and certainly the media was involved. So they came up with their famous theory that they were flares. Remember?
Well,
And that's what they said. And it's possible that maybe some of it was, but not all of the incidents at Phoenix
again,
at night.
look at what is happening there. It is one after another.
Yeah, this is kind of the more
after
classic
another.
image of the Phoenix lights.
Yep, there comes another, and they are holding their pattern very, very steady.
Yeah, this had to be one of the most highly publicized American sightings in the last
Certainly
in the last few years. Yes,
That's right.
It even led an Arizona politician from Phoenix to even run on a UFO ticket, though she lost. So it's not maybe political
Maybe
reasons.
it'll be the beginning of a so-called UFO party at some point.
But
in
it
the
was
future.
at least some beginning. She wanted to run for lieutenant governor, I think.
I recall
and,
that.
You remember? I forgot her name right now, but she got quite a bit of publicity, though not the best publicity for her.
But this must have been something to see.
It must have, yeah.
Phoenix is a good-sized city, and these lights dominate.
Yeah, I was
that
actually in
period.
Phoenix not long after these incidents.
Did you
I
have
was,
opportunity to speak to
Oh,
anyone?
sure. Everybody was
Yes,
talking
right.
about it, yes.
Now-
It was big news. I mean, the big news had passed, but the people were still talking about it. And certainly UFOs at that point were a very topical subject in Phoenix.
Yes. Well, this is a giant icebreaker for any community, and look at them once again. The number is diminishing.
Yeah, well, that's what they try to explain them as flares, that they last for a while, and then and maybe the last phase, I'm open at least to that explanation, but based on even some of the MUFON people that I talked to and all that, the early incidents could not possibly have been flares.
They were holding it for extraordinary
Because it
long
was some kind of
periods
object
in-
that was moving, clearly,
and all
crossing
together.
parts of Arizona.
Yeah. And here we see another variation
Another view,
on
I
it.
guess. Yeah.
Another VCR.
Probably taken from another part of town.
Definitely. Huh. I forget the measurement, of the length of the line, but it ran for miles.
Yeah, look how big that is. Now, in this case, though, they did seem to be separate. They didn't seem to be one huge thing.
I agree. but very well coordinated. And this again is another angle from another camera here. Jeez.
There's a different object there, but unfortunately very short. Okay, that's for Phoenix. This is a bizarre one too.
This also looks a little bit like that very bright one that we had seen some time back. I'm trying to remember where it was. Was it also in Italy? That is wild. Look at that.
Yeah, there was one round thing in Italy too.
This one seems to have more articulation.
Yeah, that was at a much farther distance. This seems to be
such a close-up in some that the pixels break up a bit, but we know we're looking at something really
very
rather
odd.
substantial.
Very, very odd.
And yes, very odd indeed.
Again, doesn't look like any kind of machine.
No.
You know, that you would, at least something you would identify with a machine.
Yeah, I can't even, think of what it might look like. It almost looks like a brightly lit rock or special effect meteor or something.
Yeah.
But it's standing fairly still. Okay, back to South America.
Oh, this is one on a beach in Bahia, and
Straight out.
they're pretty faint, but you will see them on the horizon eventually. I think they're quite at a distance. People are not noticing them.
There we go.
Right.
Upper left frame looks like 2 from here.
Right.
And then going in for that close-up.
There they are.
That's 3.
3.
Okay.
Okay, this is the one of the famous Air Force show.
Yes.
Actually, this is not in Santiago, but in Lake Pucón in the south.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the one the donuts that we were mentioning
Right.
earlier.
Right. Now watch this.
Yeah,
'cause
this
once
is,
again,
this is part of the air show.
one we
like I
have
said,
not seen before.
It's called the Falcons. Halcones in Spanish.
I'm guessing just about every military aviation has its own.
Now, that's a
variation.
lens flare, so
Right.
that's disregarded, although some people...
There we
it is.
go.
Now, as you know, Peter, I worked on as a consultant, and I was also interviewed for a TV show that was broadcast by the Chilean national TV,
Yes,
a very
indeed.
extensive series. And in that show, they interviewed some of the pilots from the air show, and they showed them the tape. And they were just completely baffled. They said, this is not something we caused. I mean, you can see it's very separate from the big trails.
Oh, for sure. No, it's not like a ring of smoke.
Yeah, because that was, obviously
Sure.
the first
You look
thing,
at
the first
everything.
thing that people will think is
It
that
is
it has to
not
be something created by the
In any
planes.
way in their contrail
No,
area.
it's not, and it also lasts for a long time.
It does. It
Where
holds
this,
its shape solidly.
And so they being official military pilots and all that, they wouldn't commit themselves as to what it was.
Oh, of
but
course.
they went as far as saying this is not something we caused, and we don't know what it is. Again, it doesn't seem to be an object, but more like a phenomenon.
It doesn't fit into any pattern.
No, this is different, and I've only seen it in Chile so far.
Uh-huh. Well, it's certainly the only thing I've ever seen like it in all my years involved in this field. It is really, really unique.
Look at that. It's a sky circle.
Yeah.
It's a new category.
As opposed to crop circle.
Yeah.
Look at that. Huh.
Cuernavaca, a very famous city in Mexico.
Whoa, pretty precise.
Yeah, it's some formation, but it's very, very grainy.
It is. It's almost difficult to see for the grain, but it does seem to have shifted from an extremely precise triangle shape to something a bit more freewheeling. We've got another light coming in there and disappearing to the right. But this is tough footage to make a solid evaluation
is,
of.
low quality.
Yeah. But again, it is a 5 unit, and again, looks like pretty precise there. triangular formation.
Right. I think the point of this collection or of UFO footage, again, UFO footage is not something that you can create on demand. You get what you get.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you get a very clear image.
Yeah.
And if
And
you're
as
not,
our viewers now know, because they're veterans of 5 hours or so.
they've seen most footage than anybody else. Now we're back to, this is an interesting
yes.
one because we see the docking here or getting close to the docking with the Mir space station.
And good old Mir, who won't be up there much
Right.
longer.
By the time people see this DVD,
That
probably the
Mir may
Mir
be,
will be history.
vaporized in the atmosphere.
But it did its job. It lasted for
Much longer than any of us
14
thought it
years.
would. Amazing.
I think they put it in orbit in 1986. They had a couple of UFO sightings even from Mir, as we saw an earlier one. And now we'll be seeing all kinds of little lights here.
Yeah.
Again, it's possible that some of them may be the ice effect, maybe, but I don't know.
They do not fit into the realm of being stars. They're clicking along there. They do not seem to be behaving. We know what meteorites look like. They streak right past.
And they go fast.
They do.
And steady.
Yeah. These things seem to be moving at a leisurely pace. Again, we have no sense of how far away they are.
No, because that's an old problem with UFO footage or even with UFO, especially with footage or photographs, is that unless you have very good reference points, plus the sometimes you don't know. It could be and especially in space,
yes.
It becomes even more of a problem.
It could be a giant thing
very
many
far
miles
away, or very small
thing
objects
close up.
to the camera. And especially in space, you don't even have the the dimensions that you have on a landscape. But that thing goes there, whatever it is.
Just right there.
And now what is interesting on this video, and there is some comments also on the audio track, that initially the camera is definitely focused on the Mir.
Yeah.
And that's what you would expect, because these are taken for NASA Select TV and so on. Yet, they seem to be veering now off the Mir as if they were actually filming these things.
Well, it's a conscious decision, and although we may be having a trimmed frame, there is no question that the Mir is no longer the center of attention in this footage.
Now, what is LL Willie? I don't know. Maybe
internal NASA code of some sort. Take your best guess.
I have no idea. Yeah, there's so many of these things that I think that, I don't know. My skeptical side says that maybe it is this ice effect or something.
Yeah, but
I have no way of knowing, and I don't know even all the details.
Moonbugs on a vacation.
Yeah, on space. It's definitely interesting, and
once again,
it's a novelty also. This has not been shown on UFO conferences or on TV shows.
This is a pretty obscure piece of tape.
First time I've seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, for this project.
Sure. It is, again, it makes you ask those questions of what is going on, what are we seeing, what does it represent? Unfortunately, we do not get to answer those questions in this DVD.
This is quite...
that's a pretty pronounced one.
Yeah, pretty clear, and it seems to be...
Whoa,
expanding, contracting, so...
It does seem to be pulsating and moving off on a slightly changed trajectory.
Kind of a classic characteristic
Seems
of
to
UFOs.
be followed by a smaller one, then there goes another one from upper right, upper left.
Okay, we'll do that now.
It's busy out there in space.
It's a busy day there. Now, finally, you get a good view of the whole Mir.
Carlos and Jean-Francois and Lou's
that's
families
from the
are all
shuttle.
here in the back room watching the whole thing. Real happy to be part of your operation.
Yeah, I'd like to see more analysis and more work done on this one.
For sure. And a really sharp oh, look at that.
Are packed fairly tightly together.
Again, it is pulsating, and again, I guess that
which
possible.
tend to limit their performance.
That's a satellite, but it sure is moving at quite a speed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now it seems to be turning a little bit.
Yeah, which is a problem.
That's a problem for satellites. Yeah, I like to see technical people look at this. See what they come up with.
Heck?
Now it's not even moving. Yeah. That could have been a meteorite.
I would say so. That really did. There you go. That one also. Yeah. But slight waver.
But this one is just steady.
Yeah, and we know it's not a star because we've seen it moving around.
Now there are tons of them, which, again, those maybe are ice. That would kind of be more consistent with the shuttle moved, or it's getting closer to the mirror, and it just spewed a lot of ice. But some of the other ones are still.
Now that seems to be pulsing along. That one that was disappearing out of frame right.
And certainly I don't know that it's ice. I'm just throwing it out.
Sure.
Now,
once again.
Now the family is growing here.
Yes. Boy, oh boy. They're going to be controlling Mexico soon.
Yeah, the pace they're going.
Goodness. And
it's so odd, though, that
again to
we
wire
see
this
these
up
now, and yet on the videos from 90, 91, 92, nothing like this.
And again, an irony here is go back to the beginning of the first tape and look at the second or third video. You'll see a configuration much like the one we just saw.
This was one that Bruce Maccabee did, I think, a lot of analysis from here from New York State.
Again, Dr. Maccabee, optical physicist, civilian employee of the Navy.
Again, you see that they're appearing more and more. Yeah. So there are some, even though there are some things like those weird trucks from Israel or whatever that we completely baffles.
Who the heck knows?
But there seem to be some other patterns, though, that are quite consistent throughout these various hundreds of tapes.
Yeah,
at least
sure is.
some patterns.
Yeah. Huh.
Though the purpose and all that still eludes us.
Gosh, I'll say. The pattern continues, slight variations. It's not a dead straight line. But they're very bright.
Yeah.
They seem to be blinking.
8 in a row.
Which could be atmospheric.
The blinking, over, the atmospheric layers.
Sure.
But this kind of formation in the sky, I don't know of any natural phenomena that does that.
Hey, back to your stomping ground?
Yeah. Well, this was an interesting case. The video is nighttime, and so it's not very clear, but the circumstances are fascinating. What was going on here, Fuensalida, the president of the group ION, was doing a radio show on one of the major AM or FM stations in Santiago, and it was about astronomy. And they had an astronomer, actually. It's normally a UFO show, but that night they were doing astronomy. And as I think the astronomer actually reads a poem about something or other.
Yeah.
And then I guess they get a call from viewers. So they go to the roof of the radio station. They continue the show live, and for something like 2 hours, there's this UFO show on the sky. While people keep calling. It's being videotaped, and it's being described live by an astronomer, an ufologist, and a journalist.
Fabulous.
The quality of the video is fuzzy, but the
pretty extraordinary. Yeah. In fact, I think that might just be a unique, completely unique situation.
Actually, it happened in Spain one time in 1979, but without video. There were only photographs taken. But it also was doing a radio show, and they went to the roof, and very similar circumstances.
Your memory is phenomenal.
This is a place in Argentina, Capilla del Monte, where there's been, it's kind of a hot spot, and many UFO ufologists go there, and contactee types, so kind of New Age people go there, and so on.
Whoa. That's impressive. Doesn't look like a lenticular cloud. Certainly doesn't look like
No,
a
it looks quite
conventional
different from the
aircraft.
other clouds. You can see
It sure is. It seems
plenty of clouds
self-illuminated
there.
as well.
back to Chile again. 97 was a very, well, as you know, there were so many sightings in Chile in the mid-90s and late 90s that finally even led to the creation of the Government Commission.
Yeah.
And Chile has joined practically very handful of countries to have an official, publicly known group, you know, and we're not
I
talking
wish-
of covert surveillance of ufology. That
I do wish
happened.
the American government would pick
And
up the cue.
it's run by the people from the Civil Aviation Agency. And yeah, again, many of these footage over air shows.
Yes.
This one in Brazil. This place, Sao Jose dos Campos, is, you probably remember that case. It's the same airport where that famous case of the Air Force jets in 1986 in Brazil. That's where it all started, in this particular airport.
And there's the object heading up center screen. And back 10. What is it? We have no idea at this
Yeah.
distance. But its behavior suggests that it is not part of this formation or
Well,
any
it's
other.
in very, very slow motion. Now, I think it went so fast and so quick that they had to like really
Sometimes it's all
freeze the
can
frame,
do.
you know.
Sure.
It's only so that people can at least see a little bit. Okay. Oh, this is one of the more controversial ones.
Oh, yeah.
Se ve poca madre.
Oh, goodness.
Se ve perfecto. Se ve perfecto.
And this is very different from all the other white balls that we've been seeing in Mexico.
I'll say.
And anonymous video too.
Yeah. This is one of those ones that, well, I don't know, I find myself wishing and hoping it's real and just
No lo veo.
don't know. We know that there's been some analysis on this. The analysis suggests
Yeah.
that it is doctored. But
Doctor by using digital technology now,
Right.
that
But-
the old days would have been very difficult.
for what it's worth, a number of witnesses have come forward and said that they saw it. And you pays your money and you takes your choice.
Right. Yeah. Mike Hesseman interviewed some witnesses, and
Yeah.
so he believes to be real.
Yeah, he interviewed him himself.
But on the other hand, Bruce Maccabee and Jeff Sanio from MUFON, who initially believed it was real, actually they later reversed because they claimed that they caught the sort of the signature of how the thing was done, how the trickery was done. But it's quite a technical explanation, and I don't remember. It was an overlay of an image, from what I remember. But you know, it was a lot of very technical explanations.
And again,
which were published in the MUFON Journal.
Yeah, our listeners have to keep in mind that just because you have some expertise in this field, our guess on a certain level is no better than yours. We don't know whether this is genuine. Again, I have to say, in my heart, I hope it is, and all the facts are not in, that's for sure.
Right.
It certainly has to be one of the most controversial that we are watching in this entire
Right.
long series.
Unfortunately, it's not a matter of what we wish. You know?
Yeah.
It's either real or not. In this case. In other cases, it can be a phenomenon, a natural phenomenon, whatever. But in this type of footage, it's very black and white. Either it's real and it happened as filmed, or someone tricked it.
Yeah.
By basically filming the buildings and then with digital technology adding the saucer. And it's a very controversial, certainly the most controversial of all the Mexican videos.
I think you're right there. There's no question that nothing else in the Mexican footage we've seen is quite as in your face as that.
Right, because very few of these, anybody, I mean, even the balloons and stuff, it's still something that's been shot. It's not a hoax per se,
Yeah.
It's an object that perhaps is later identified. But in that case, like I said, it's only basically two options.
Yeah, and
Take your pick,
redefines the phrase UFO.
But it's packed and parcel of the ufology. There's always been controversies anyway.
Yeah, and always will be, probably.
Yeah, so long as it's a mystery.
Until they land and say hello.
Yeah, if they land, or the government comes public and says, here's an alien or a saucer.
Here are the different models that we've been making for all these years.
If it's a mystery, there's going to be controversy about it, and the best we can hope is that people can discuss it in a civilized way, and even if they don't agree, they can still have a fruitful dialogue instead of a bitter, acrimonious, which happens unfortunately too.
Manchester, good-sized industrial city.
Similar to some of the ones in Chile. Some of the ones in Chile we saw earlier.
Remarkable color infusion there as well.
Go behind that. No.
Isn't that
it's
wild?
like he
that
wanted to,
once
and
again,
then it changed his mind.
Quite unlike anything we've
I know,
seen
in actual
before.
phenomena, you see, would never do that. And back to Chile, Ion Archives, many, and each time I communicate with Rodrigo Fonsalida all the time, mostly by email, and practically each time I get an email from him, he's got some new videos that has acquired. Again, the video cameras seem to be quite widespread in Chile now, and there's been a lot of exposure to UFOs with all the sightings and the government investigations and all that. So many people are watching the skies and are, following this up.
Yes.
I think this was taken in the south, in the very south of Chile.
And look at that dramatic shift that we just saw in the lighting pattern.
Punta Arenas, which is practically at the tip of the continent, and which is a very hot spot. Many abductions in that area.
Back to UFO Center.
Back to our friends, the white balls from Mexico.
Gosh.
Yeah, which are almost becoming friends by now.
I guess. There it is.
I think this may split. We've seen so many of these that my brain is a mix.
And,
it's a mush
in
of white
preparing
balls.
to do this voiceover, we have both been
we've been
rewatching
watching
this
them,
material.
Some, of course, both of us had seen it previously, but then again,
Mike
thanks to Mike, there's
gotten
some
a
stuff
tremendous collection together here of ones that, in many cases,
that most people
I
have not
never seen before.
Yeah, that I have to hand it to Mike. He really works very hard to get all this material, and he travels all over the world.
He does.
And he does it constantly.
And if you are in Germany or Central Europe, you can subscribe to his terrific magazine, Magazine
2000, which is, you see the logo there, and has been in existence for almost 20 years now.
And again, that's in German, Czech,
and I think Slovak. Now there's a few Eastern European editions.
Originally, a bunch of us are hoping that it will come out in English at some point in the future, but he's certainly a presence there.
Oh, yeah. And also he's done many conferences, and they're very large, and they're called Dialogue with the Universe.
But he's probably the best-known personality in this field that American researchers are certainly aware of in Germany.
Because he of course, he speaks English, and he's lecturing in this country. His books have been translated and published
listened to his
here.
lectures, enjoyed them very much. He is very prolific.
That was a bird, I guess, that went by.
It was a bird or a plane or Superman.
Or Superman.
One of the three. Okay,
We're back to Israel. Another hot spot.
Okay, we've got what looks like a conventional jet contrail in the upper right, and one of our friendly white dots on stage left, now center. No.
I think he's getting, that probably
that
camera
interesting
effect.
flare.
Yeah,
probably, but again, either that or, my God.
or it expanded. But the thing is, this is so replicable in one video and then in another that I think that's what it is.
Well, that or Devil's Advocate, we've got a similar craft that looks like a diamond kind of thing, but again, there is no question that there is a real thing out there.
There is
and that we may or may not be seeing a refraction through the lens, but there is something there that is refracting.
Well, in other words, that camera effect cannot be produced without an object there.
Now,
So that doesn't invalidate at all the
Do you
sighting.
think we are seeing here a genuine scramble?
It almost looks
It
like.
sure looks like that jet
And,
is pacing after
yes.
that thing. I mean, it is heading toward it.
And considering
general
the
direction.
defense circumstances
Oh, you
in
bet.
Israel, I bet they have good files, the Israeli
guess.
military and intelligence. They have not been sharing them with the rest of the public,
Yeah,
but
very likely. We've just lost the contrail there. And now we've lost the... No, we
and
haven't.
I never heard of official investigations in Israel, but they probably consider just an intelligence matter.
And again, on airspace, you can bet they're very protective.
Also, you know that even over the years, the military mostly, their concern is to whether the thing is a threat. If it's not a threat, even Nick Pope explained it very well from England. I mean, that's not their job. If it's not a threat, it's someone else's job.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't mean it's not real or they're not concerned, but their immediate reaction is this poses
is
a
not
threat?
our department.
Yeah, let other department of the government deal.
Scientific study or what have you, but if it does not seem to be a problem for our citizens, we have other things to do.
Right. So I think that's probably the case, especially so in Israel, where they're very busy with a lot of other problems.
Yeah.
They probably don't have the time to really do an in-depth investigation of UFOs. They just want to know, is this thing going to pose a threat?
Well, we see it in the early American documentation, so much of which is on this DVD.
Very clearly. In fact, the Robertson panel, which I'm sure you have some of the documents in the DVD.
Well, actually, I'm not even sure, but it threads its way through. If this is a threat, and again, in the early days, is it a Soviet threat?
Well, that was the concern at that time. You have to put in the context, the sociological context on how those documents were written at that time, right?
And the history of the moment was that they were their big number one enemy. There is a certain amount of actual theorizing about if these are extraterrestrial.
Yeah, they even do deal with that possibility.
And that's wonderfully dealt with in the Project Sign papers, I must say, very poignantly, in fact, very non-bureaucratic kind of language. Okay, we have a conventional aircraft coming in on the left and an unconventional one leaving on the right. Those white dots do get around.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Now that's nice to see.
That was a nice one to see.
Just out of a dead stop, pretty much, took off.
Yeah, we've seen a few like this too.
Huh. No, there's nothing ambiguous about that shape. It's it's a something.
Could be those little balloons.
Yeah, that is something that looks like it could be carried on the wind, and it disappears frame left, and we move on to Mexico City again.
And night shot. There's all kinds of flickering there, but I don't think that's it. That must be antennas or something.
I'm getting that sense too.
Because they're not even concentrating on that.
No, this is those three lights at the moment. And again, yeah, it looks like an antenna shot.
Right. Yeah, because it could be over a hill or something, you know. It looks like it's on this, but at night you cannot tell.
Exactly.
It could be, that's probably what it is. In fact, it almost even looks like an antenna.
And let's bear in mind again that these white dots are not giving off that regular flashing that we associate with commercial and private aircraft. That even at a distance you do tend to see.
Yeah, although sometimes it is misleading.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and especially if the craft is coming directly toward you.
Yeah. Also, what would be the location? If they say they're going towards an airport and they're going down, you know, some people have been misled. We've seen strange things like this before.
That's true. On 3 or 4 of the tapes we've watched over the last 5+ hours, we have seen a very similar. Oh,
now we see two.
Now that's particularly interesting to see them together as opposed to independent. Let's see if we can get all three in frame there.
Nothing here. There it is. It's probably there's one above and two, yeah. So he's trying to, I think he was trying to get all in one frame, and he can't.
He can't. They are keeping their distance. That is unusual. We have not seen anything like that in combination
Not in
with
formation,
others.
right. Alone, yes, but not in groups.
And we have a terrifically well-defined variant kind of sky.
Yeah.
In places.
Looking for them, and well,
So-
because some of the cameras have such a small, viewfinder.
Yeah.
And especially at night, it can be really tricky sometimes to find the UFO.
Well, what is that? The big question.
Well, it's the big question throughout this DVD, but not just
And
this particular
throughout a
one.
good part of our lives in the last
as well,
50 years
yeah.
as well.
And more Mexico.
Yeah.
Endless amount of stuff from Mexico.
I guess. Now, it looks once again like we are dealing with a vertical cigar-shaped object.
We've seen some of these too.
We have something to really measure
Perhaps at
even
quite
its
a
subtle
distance
movement
there.
against.
Costa Rica.
I don't know if we've seen any footage
No,
from Costa Rica.
this is the first one in this particular video.
Coming in from
And,
the upper left there.
As you know, there's a very famous photograph from Costa Rica taken by the Geographical Institute. With the really specialized cameras over the lake.
Yep. That's actually a very beautiful photograph, too.
And it's one of the best photographs anywhere.
And you see the reflection on the lake itself.
And you have, it's like a gold mine of reference points because it's for making maps. So, and it's taken from above, which is, I mean, the plane is above the UFO, which practically never happens.
That's a particularly poignant, beautiful photograph because of the way that it's framed and set. It seems to be fully
A
authentic.
place called Cote Lake. In fact, I went there. We went with Richard Haynes, the scientist formerly with
One of
NASA.
our greatest researchers.
One of the more scientific oriented ufologists, because he's a real scientist and has worked at the space program for many, many years.
Unlike most of us who are self-trained in this field.
And he did a complete technical analysis of that photo, and we visited Costa Rica in '96, and he wanted to see the lake so he could take some measurements and stuff. He had never been there. He had done the research, on paper, so to speak.
Well, that's the mark of a first-class researcher.
So in '97, there was a flap in Costa Rica. What you're seeing here is part of the news report.
Yes.
And I guess this is the guy who made the tape, and they're interviewing him, and it caused quite a flap on the local newspapers and so on. Yeah, I remember I was in Costa Rica, of course, a year earlier, a year and a half earlier. But I remember seeing on the newspapers in South America when these sightings happened. There were also some very good cases from Costa Rica involving policemen. Not in this particular flap, but in other previous ones.
Right, and here we have the actual...
This is from the newscast, 7 días, which would mean 7 days, like a regular news program. Misterios del cielo, mysteries of the sky. And from what I remember when I heard previously the audio track, they were basically just saying that many people have seen these objects, and there was a mystery about what they were.
I guess.
Yes.
It is one that is going to continue way beyond the time that we finish with this extraordinary amount of footage.
They mentioned that some people will believe that they're spacecraft from, ET, others that they're balloons. They do mention balloons. Others that they're signs from the Bible, because there's a lot of evangelists and so on in Central America. So some people will see signs or whatever, will interpret them,
UFOs really are quite a device for people essentially saying, well, this is what I can believe, this is what I can accept. Beyond that, I don't think so. A lot of times we really find ourselves sort of rigid in our thinking in the subject and don't want to cross that line to say, well, maybe they're not this, maybe they're that.
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, people, it's just a basic characteristic of human psychology to try to put it in understandable terms. Maybe for us who would like a more scientific explanation, maybe from someone else, a biblical reference is what it will calm him, you know.
For others, they're going to see it as purely military test devices.
Right, a very skeptical guy. If it's a good case, he cannot deny it, but he'll say, well, it has to be a military device or a natural phenomenon or whatever.
But we all seek our own levels, and if all fear, when you take it down to the baseline, is fear of the unknown, and in fact it really is, no matter what it is this going to happen, is this not going to happen to me, or somebody I love, I would say this is one of the mothers of taking fear to the baseline.
Well, sure, especially if you have a close encounter or an abduction or something. If you see it at that distance, it's probably fine and it's uplifting.
Well, not only exactly, it's very exciting to have an actual
when you see the thing landing in your backyard,
and come with us, Earth person.
Right.
Yeah.
Then
this is not fun.
Fear is a very common. Here again,
flotilla.
This is, we're getting towards the end of the disc now, and now there are like 80 or whatever, I didn't count them, but
dozens.
So, what the hell is it?
That's got to be a real rough sight for a skeptic, I'll tell you. The tiny little round white clouds.
No, because even as a hoax, it doesn't make sense. Yes, Las Lomas with the big saucer of a building, if you want to be a skeptic, you know, a hoax is a good solution for that one, if that's what makes you happy. But this, if you want to create a hoax, this is not the thing to do.
No, we are, once again, I mean, we're almost at the end of this tremendous collection. And I'll tell you, no matter how long I work in this field, I keep coming back to that feeling of, what are these things?
Well, I've been over 20 years, and I'm nowhere closer to a solution that I was when I started. Yes, I have 100 times more data, and a huge collection, and tons of documents and photos and videos and so on. But that doesn't, I mean, as far as what are the real purpose of UFOs, what is it all about?
And we've got yet another slight variation on the configuration here in the lower left. Right by that aircraft, or at least in same frame.
Always nice when you get the two things on the same frame.
Yeah, that is good.
And we're back to Chile again. We saw some very similar, almost identical. I think it was Mexico or Ecuador.
Definitely
I forgot where, but
South or Central America.
Yeah. It is some kind of confirmation in a sense when you do see such similar things.
Right, and
2 years apart.
In that last sequence, it was also, we had an earlier one where it sort of broke down into 3 pixels.
Back to the volcano region of central Mexico again. Popocatépetl is a famous volcano. Now, as you know, there is a phenomenon which is little understood, known as Earth lights.
Right.
These don't seem like that.
No.
Those are usually at night, and they're very close to the ground.
Exactly. Almost always.
They're real, and they're unexplained, but there is most likely a natural phenomenon. This is an interesting one with a parachute.
Parachutist.
But you only see those 3 objects there stationary, basically. It goes very fast.
Let's see if the camera goes back to
I think they repeat them. No, I don't know that they go fast. They repeat the scene, though.
Right, here we are.
Yeah, there they are. 4. And they're way too bright to be planets at that time of the day.
You bet.
Now we're back to Costa Rica.
Day after Christmas.
Yeah, this December I remember. I was in Ecuador, I remember, and it got a lot of attention on the Ecuadorian newspapers that there had been these sightings in Costa Rica.
And this enigmatic shape that has threaded its way through.
It's been one of the most popular throughout this collection. You notice how little saucers. In the beginning, maybe a couple, and then, of course, the big controversial one from Mexico. They seem to be out of fashion, saucers these days.
Well, we used to make cars with fins on them, and now we don't.
Because
I mean, we joke about it, but one wonders. There is very likely, if this phenomena in part is extraterrestrial based.
maybe technology evolves in their places too.
Yes, and there are very likely manufacturing plants somewhere out there that are turning out variations on these craft.
Well, maybe I'm being facetious here, but maybe the saucer, after all the crashes in New Mexico and all that, it proved to be an unreliable
They
model.
had to tighten up the plan there, and you are being facetious. And another curious shape there.
The Mo Gonzalez.
And this is literally the next day.
Right. A camera effect again.
But let us remember camera effect on
Camera effect based on something.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't want people to misunderstand.
Yeah.
But it is important, if that indeed is what it is,
Yes.
I believe it is, but I'm not a complete technical
Again, maybe
expert on
that is
video.
a configuration of a certain type
People
of
ought to
craft.
know these things, because
It's important.
yeah, there you
It
have
is
it.
still a
It is
genuine,
classic.
unknown,
It's-
unidentified flying object, but that may simply be a refraction of the actual object that is up there.
Yeah, it's a very technical explanation, but it's a kind of a reflection with the iris of the camera. Like
Yeah.
I said, I have the report here by Takanashi, which you're welcome to photocopy later or something if you want to read the technical explanation. But perhaps better demonstrated is also in that British documentary.
Yes. There is so much good material out there, and I think for Antonio and I, part of the spirit we approach this in is as students of something we do not really understand, which is pretty much the best spirit any of us can start to look at this in. Respect for what we don't understand is an important point of departure, and talking about points of departure,
We're done with 97. I think we have just a one or two from 98,
so.
and then a couple maybe from the archives.
possibly, but we're coming into the home stretch
Yes,
here.
we're almost done. It's been a long, long journey. And
50 years. Seemed like it passed
50 years. Oh, this is an extraordinary good one.
Yes.
I'm familiar with this one because in Chile this got a lot of attention. And the Capeo Redondo one, it's a small object that you will see. Now it will go into the city and go across the street and do all kinds of things. So it's very unusual. And
Look at that drop, the speed it's going
and
down.
it's also ideal in terms of reference points.
Watch this. It literally meanders just over the city.
Yeah, at times it goes out of focus because, obviously the cameraman, which was a woman, that it was interviewed also on TV, but we won't see this in this disc here. Obviously, what happens is people see these kinds of things and they want to get as maximum detail,
Yeah.
but then unfortunately things go out of focus. But at least she has the good sense to go back to the...
And she stays with
And she stays
the
with it,
image.
yes.
It is very frustrating when you're caught in a moment like this. I can only imagine to try to get back into sharp focus.
Yeah, I never had that experience. I did manage to take one picture of a UFO one time in near White Sands, as a matter of fact. Probably even a military thing or whatever, but that's it.
Look at this.
Yeah, I mean, this is so unusual.
amazing.
And then you will even see a car go by, and at times it's very clear.
Yes. It doesn't look like it's very far off the ground.
It's at night, so you don't see many people or anything. There goes the car.
And it sure seems self-illuminated.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, in Chile, where this video was very famous, even though it's taken in Brazil, they call these objects, and it's the only place where they still use the term, in contemporary term, Foo Fighters. They
Oh
call
my
it a Foo
goodness.
Fighter.
That goes back to World
To World
War
War II, and in the United States and elsewhere, it's used only as historical term. But in Chile, they use it to describe a type of object, like the Foo Fighters. And they use it in Spanish and everything. Oh, I saw a Foo Fighter and so on. Now we go on the
Flashback
final
to the
things.
70s for a
Yes.
moment.
These are, I think, some... yeah, this is... I don't know what to say about this one.
It's very grainy. It's on its side. It's close to the
seems to
ground,
be-
and it's gone.
Maybe contactee oriented.
Yeah.
Now this is in Brazil, 91. Again, we've seen many of this type.
Similar
where you see the
configurations.
whole lights of the city
Yes.
and this very luminous object right in the sky, not behaving at all like a plane
No.
or a planet or moon or satellite or
And
Any known
again,
object.
to point out that it does seem self-illuminated, which is rarely the case with a conventional aircraft.
right.
mean,
You will only see the
It can catch
blinking lights.
reflective light,
Yeah.
but that seems like the lights are on in somebody's home.
Well, at a distance, a plane looks like a blob of light sometimes.
Yeah.
But this looks too big for that.
And again,
It's
even
only like a
at
little dot at a distance of plane, and then
no discernible, flashers or anything like that that we do associate with most aircraft.
the cameraman is
On his side.
turning there.
Ah.
Oh yeah, these are from
Yes.
Air Force. Yes. This was explained though by Bruce Maccabee eventually. He thinks it was an airplane. But it's still interesting because these are surveillance
What a curious image, yes.
surveillance cameras of the Air Force.
Once
And
again.
This one is more bizarre.
Whoa.
The other one, I think Bruce is probably right. He spent a lot of time looking at that. But this one, I
don't
had
know
not seen
what
this
to
one
think of either of them.
either until I came across these tapes for this particular taping.
Well, it is not
And very
behaving like a
strange.
meteor or meteorite,
No,
that's for
and
sure.
it is at least that's what it says, that it's an official U.S. Air Force film.
Okay, let's stay with this.
This looks probably a much older one.
Looks like a little AIM
Yeah,
9
this
or
is
some
an
kind of
unknown date.
A120. Ah, somebody's tracking that missile. Too much. Okay, we watch the object go by. There it
There.
is. And then the missile deploys.
Right. Yeah, again, I had not seen this tape until...
No, this is a first for me too. And again, thank you, Mike, for putting together some of this extremely unusual footage. Okay, for our very last segment, we are in China, Beijing. Classic disc shape, kind of a poignant note to end on.
Yeah, and also very interesting, that is our first videotape from China. We've covered dozens of countries.
Yeah.
And probably because maybe there are not so many video cameras in
I'd
China.
say that would be a
or,
contributing factor.
I think they have other systems too, so there's problems in conversion.
Also, probably just getting it out.
And getting it out of China, whatever the problems are. But this is the very first videotape that I'm aware of coming from China.
I know it's the first one I've seen.
It's the first one I've seen too, but in October and November of 1998, there were two or three videotapes. We haven't seen them, but we know about them because they were reported in the Chinese press.
Right. This one
And,
dates, of course, from January.
This is from '95, actually. So this is goes. So
Right.
and there are probably more. There must be quite a few by now, but they still need to be collected and put together. But at least this is the first one, and it's a good one too, and it's very
surely
long.
is. Yeah, we're going to watch this for quite a while here.
Yeah, and this reason we obtained this one is thanks to Professor Sun Shi Li.
Right, who you
Who
know.
is, yes, I know him quite well because he's a very prominent Chinese ufologist, but he's also a man with very interesting credentials. He's a professor of economics at Beijing University. And the reason I can have quite a dialogue with him, he's perfectly fluent in Spanish. Doesn't speak a word of English. And I think I've already, like 3 or 4 times, I have acted as his interpreter. because, yes, I speak Spanish and no one else in the hall speaks Chinese. So you either need an interpreter that can translate from Chinese or from Spanish, and so it falls on me. And so I had an opportunity to interview him. He's a very nice fellow. And his Spanish is so good that he used to be the interpreter for Chairman Mao. And there's even a picture that he gave me where he appears very young, of course, because he's not an old fellow. Mao is probably taken in the early 70s, and the president of the Uruguayan Communist Party. So whenever a dignitary from Latin America or Spain would visit Mao, they would go to to... And in fact, it was thanks to his knowledge of Spanish how he got involved in ufology.
How's that?
He used to work for the China Reconstructs, so one of those Chinese government, propaganda publications or government publications.
With the Spanish edition.
Which they have editions like in 20 languages, and of course, being so many countries that speak Spanish, they have a very important Spanish department.
That have to.
And so he got a book written by a Spanish ufologist called Faber Kaiser, who's now deceased, called... I forgot the name of the book, but it was basically a book about ancient astronauts, but maybe went into modern ufology as well.
Yeah.
And he got very excited. This coincided with that period in China in the late 70s when ufology was finally open.
Right.
China was the last country, in fact, of the major countries. Russia was a little bit ahead, even though it was somewhat censored, but at least people knew that there were such things as...
Remember, we were even seeing references to military publications.
Yes, so there were some, at least reports, or even if they were attacked as capitalist propaganda, whatever. But in China, there was a blackout. People didn't know that in the rest of the world, ufology was a well-known controversy, or whatever you want to call it, but it was something that was debated and seen, because China was such a closed country, and during the period of the 50s, and then the Cultural Revolution and all these upheavals. Finally, in the 70s, when it first opened up after the fall of the Gang of Four, is when ufology also appeared with a famous editorial on the People's Daily, the official newspaper of the Communist Party, which basically said that yes, UFOs were worthy of study and debate or whatever, and that's how it all started. This fellow, because he got so excited about this book that he translated it to Chinese, and he became automatically an expert because nobody knew anything about UFOs in China. And he gained access he was invited to universities, to the Institute of Space Studies and places like that. So he's very well, he's got very good connections. And obviously, he was one of the presidents of CURO, which is a China UFO research organization. And I've been lucky in the last few years to have met him, and we've struck a good friendship. Like I said, I have interviewed him, I've acted as his interpreter and so on. So we've been obtaining a lot of Chinese material from him and from other sources.
And to the best of your knowledge, the first time this was shown outside of China was at the...
I saw it at the Congress in San Marino. Yes,
right.
Because I think that the professor had problem with the conversion of the tapes, because in China, I understand that they use another format that is not even PAL, something else. So, it was kind of a great novelty that we were able to see a videotape from China. And then he only discussed the new ones, but he apologized that he didn't have the copies. So I'm sure he comes every year to San Marino, so probably next year I will be able to see them. And I'm sure, knowing Mike Hesseman, he'll get his hands on the new videos.
Yes.
But so far we have this one, which was quite long and very classic, and definitely a good finale to this whole series. Well, and also, after all, China is a fourth of the world's population, so...
We hope that you have enjoyed this and that you will spend some time studying this remarkable collection of documents on this DVD. It has been our pleasure to be your guides through these UFOs, and watch the skies
and keep an open mind.
Amen.